Hello, everyone. My name is Bleach Derry, and thank you so much for joining me today. So, I have something a little bit of a rant that I kind of wanted to talk about, or really, it's not really a rant. It's more so something that's been on my mind recently that I wanted to at least make a video about because I think it would make for some interesting discussion. And that has to do with bootleg albums. Stuff like vinyls, CDs, cassettes, the physical parts of it. Any unauthorized releases that haven't been put out by the bands that made those albums. So bootlegs are an interesting thing when it comes to collecting because it's one of those things where it doesn't really happen very often, at least not from what I've seen, but it's still something that you kind of have to look out for. So, and I have a couple releases that I'd like to show off that I have purchased actually fairly recently because I've been I've been pretty good at avoiding bootlegs for the most part, but apparently that streak has been broken recently over the past like a little over a month, and I could show you those records or show you those releases that I have in just a moment. But when it comes to bootlegs, I don't really mind them, I guess. Like, I'm not really mad at it, but like it is one of those things that I kind of try to avoid because when it comes to buying albums that I really like, I like to give my support, to the artists that actually put out those albums. And when it comes to bootlegs, it's usually from third-party companies that just want to make a quick buck off of other people's work. And most of the time, it's just really not a good decision to buy bootlegs. The only reason that I would ever see that I would want a bootleg is if a band put out an album like 20, 30 years ago that's only ever been pressed like once, and the original pressings for those are just way too unaffordable. Um, then I would say if the bootlegs do exist of that album, that would probably have to be the best bet in ways of, being able to afford that album. But if it's something like, say, for example, Follow the Leader by Korn, something that's probably been released so many times since its release, there's absolutely no reason to buy a bootleg for this whatsoever, just because you'll be able to find it like pretty much anywhere. So, no real reason to ever search for a bootleg for that. But yeah, so it's one of those things where it's just I'm not really mad at the fact that I have certain bootlegs. It's just a little disappointing when you find out that they are bootlegs. And I'll go ahead and show you those albums right here. So this was one that I got about a little over a month ago at the Chicagoland Record Expo. Something I like to go to every now and then just to search for records, and that would be this copy of Loveless by My Bloody Valentine. I'm not a massive shoegaze fan. I never really have been. I've listened to a handful of just standalone shoegaze albums, and I've never really cared for it all that much. I like shoegaze a lot when it's mixed with black metal, but that's pretty much the extent of what my listening of shoegaze is. And with this particular album, I first listened to it like a few years ago for the first time, and at the time, I thought it was kind of mid. I really didn't understand the hype all that much. Like, I thought it was good, but it wasn't really something that I was going to go back to. And really, I just never touched the album for the longest time. And then, I ended up re-listening to the album earlier this year, and I got to see my taste change right before my eyes, which is kind of funny, because when I re-listened to it, I was like, you know what? This is actually not too bad. I really enjoy this album. So when I went to the Record Expo, I wanted to make sure that I got a copy of this album, because I figured it would be really nice for the collection. And I went through all the booths, had a really hard time finding it, surprisingly. There weren't very many people who were selling it. I think I only saw like 2 people who were selling anything My Bloody Valentine related. But then I eventually found this from a seller who had multiple copies of Loveless. Usually when I see people who have like certain copies of certain albums, they usually only have like one version, maybe 2 at best. But this guy just had like a whole number of them. And when I say a whole number of them, probably like 3 or 4, I would say. So when I saw it, I immediately wanted to pick it up, didn't really think about it at all. I knew it was going to come home with me, and it was surprisingly like affordable for what it was, so I bought it. and I brought it home with a whole bunch of other stuff too. And I went to Discogs because I was interested to see which copy this was, and turns out there was a company in Germany who was making unauthorized releases of this album, and this happened to be one of them. I don't really know the exact ways of like showing you how it's a bootleg. The only thing I could really show is that the company made a whole bunch of records that were different color variants. Mine is actually probably the nicest one. It's a really nice purple variant. It looks really cool, though. So they did a really good job with the design for the record. But it doesn't come with anything else. It doesn't come with, like, an insert with a lyric sheet or anything. It doesn't come with, like, any other extra stuff that bands usually like to put in for records. It's literally just the most bare-bones thing that you can think of. So, again, something that I'm not really mad about the fact that it's a bootleg. It's just a little disappointing because it's it's not an official release. I would prefer if all of my stuff was official releases, but unfortunately, sometimes when you end up bringing a record home and you end up looking it up and seeing that it's a bootleg, it can be a little disappointing. But at the end of the day, the record sounds fine for what it is. It's another thing you kind of have to worry about with bootlegs is that sometimes when these third-party companies are putting out these releases, they kind of take away a little bit of the quality of the album. Whereas you're gonna want the full quality when it's from the actual band. But any unauthorized releases, you kind of have to worry about that. But the record sounds fine for what it is, so I'm pretty happy with it anyway. But the second time that I bought a bootleg release was also probably like a few weeks ago. I ended up going to a record store that was pretty far away that I've never been to, because when I looked at their social media, they usually like to post every now and then about new stuff that they've gotten, and they managed to get a CD copy of Don't Break the Oath by Mercyful Fate, which is an incredible classic traditional heavy metal album. Love this thing so much. I love Mercyful Fate. I love King Diamond, and I love his solo band as well. Really love the album Abigail a lot. That album is just so sick. But this one is probably my favorite release as well from Mercyful Fate. Either that or Melissa. Both of those albums are just incredible. But I saw that they had this CD, and I really wanted to go out there because I would say that it was worth the drive to go out there. And I got a whole bunch of other stuff too. Bunch of vinyls, other CDs, because I figured since it's a bit of a drive and I'm probably not going to be there again for a while, I should probably pick up a whole bunch of other stuff just so I don't have to go back there anytime soon. And this happened to be one of them. So when I brought it home, again, I looked it up on Discogs, and sure enough, there was a company in Russia who was putting out unauthorized releases of this album, and this happened to be one of them. This one I can actually tell you how I'm able to discern it from it being bootleg or not. It's kind of hard to tell with the glare and all that, but if you see the Roadrunner record, or the Roadrunner logo on there, you see how it's the flat bar, the traditional logo for it. If it was an official release, that logo would wrap around the entire top part of the disc. That's usually how you would see it for official releases, but since it's a bootleg release, of course it looks different. So that's how I found out that it was. And when I found out, I was like, oh man, that really does kind of suck. And I end up paying like a little more than usual than I would for a used CD. Like this was $20, which is definitely way more than I would pay for any used CDs or anything. But like the other albums that I bought that were all also used were usually in between like $8 to $10, which is great. Definitely more affordable for that. But I think this was just a case where the people who own the record store didn't really know what they had. So they just thought, oh, it's a Mercyful Fate release and one of their more popular ones. Of course we're going to bring the price up a little bit because there's going to be someone who wants it. And yeah, that person is me because I ended up buying it. So it was, again, it's one of those things where it's just it's not really like, I'm not really mad about it, about the fact that it's a bootleg, because, again, I'm happy that I just have the album as it is. And, again, it sounds fine. Like, I don't really notice anything wrong with it. But still, it's just a little disappointing to find out that the album that you bought wasn't put out by the bands that you really enjoy. Because I like to support bands that I really really love, either going to shows and buying their albums directly from them. I definitely have plenty of those in both my records and my CDs from all the shows that I've gone to. And I like to buy my stuff as like new as I can. Uh, Sometimes when it comes to used releases, it really just depends on the album, of course. But if it's a band that I really, really love and appreciate, I want to try and support them at least as directly as I can. So again, it really sucks when you end up finding out that the albums that you pay for were bootlegs. But again, it's not really something like to complain about that much, I guess. Again, it depends on the release, it depends on the album, it depends on the band as well. But it's just one of those things where I'm happy to have the album, but I do really wish that it was an official release at the end of the day. And who knows, maybe in the future, if I end up finding an official release of either Loveless or Don't Break the Oath, maybe I'll end up buying that and I'll see if I can sell the bootlegs. I ended up looking up on Discogs as well, seeing if there were any prices for people selling those, and only to find out that you can't sell bootlegs on Discogs. So wouldn't be able to figure out how much these are worth. Probably a little less than market value if it was an official release or not. But I'm gonna have to figure that out in due time. Who knows if I'm gonna come across those albums again. But yeah, there's just something that I kind of want to talk about. Something that's been kind of on my mind recently, because there were some pretty recent purchases for me, so it's been kind of something that I've been thinking about, and I figured it would be something cool to talk about for a video. But I think that's really it. I think that's gonna do it. So keep on collecting, stay meadow. Sorry, I messed that up. Keep on collecting, stay metal, and as always, have a good day.